Good morning, and welcome to another Seize the Day. Today's Monday, February the 10th, and grateful that I have this opportunity to sit and talk with you again about our current series on Casket Empty, a series that is bringing us through the Old Testament and helping us to gain a perspective on this redemptive theme that is found throughout the scriptures. We're nearing our conclusion on the Old Testament. This is week 15, and we're going to take a look at Judah's unrepentance and just figure out how this fits in with the rest of the story that God has been bringing to us. For past resources, sermons, all of this, you can find that on our BethanyChurch.com page. Just hit our Casket Empty. You'll find videos that are there, not only of the sermons, but also of teaching that Dr. Carol Kaminsky has put together. And just putting a little heads up out there that we're also going to have our New Testament overview seminar by Dr. David Palmer, who's going to come and spend a Saturday with us. And then we're going to interview him for a Sunday service following. And then we're going to kick off our New Testament study. So that'll be right around the beginning of March. So we're closing in on that as we continue with our studies here in the Old Testament part of the series Casket Empty. So again, you might, if you don't have those materials for the New Testament, you can pick them up at casketempty.com. They're also available on YouTube, Amazon, and you could also pick those up when you come for the seminar itself. So we're looking forward to that. We are in week 15, and I trust you guys are waking up ready and refreshed to begin this new study. We are going to spend some time just reviewing some of the Old Testament narrative that we find taking place before us. So here, I'd like to begin by just putting up on our platform again this overarching map that you'll find here that shows Israel is divided. At one time, all of this area was part of a unified Israel, right? God takes the people. If you look all the way on the bottom of this map, you'll see. I'll blow this up just a little bit more. Here you go. So you can see at the bottom of the map, there's a city called Kadesh Barnea. That is where Moses brought the Israelites. And yet that first generation of people who came out of Egypt, they refused to go and take the land that God had promised. They were intimidated by its inhabitants, and I guess they didn't see enough of God's power to bring about that sense of security that God was going to do what he said. And so they wind up encamping here at Kadesh Barnea, and they would not go, which then meant they went all the way back down into Egypt, and there they would find that whole generation would die out. The next generation comes, and once again they arrive to Kadesh Barnea, only this time they're going to go. And so they begin to make their way on the east side of the Dead Sea that you see there in the middle of your map. And so if you look to the right of the map here for Kadesh Barnea, you'll see Edom, right? Edom, descendants of Lot, right? Of Esau. Jacob and Esau. Jacob, we know now, right, was the father of 12 sons that became the 12 tribes of Israel. And so what you find is Jacob and Esau were twins. The blessing came through Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel. And so now the descendants here of his brother Esau, they live in Edom. And if you go up that side, you see Moab. Moab is where you find Abraham's nephew, Lot. And you might know Lot from the Sodom and Gomorrah story. And Sodom and Gomorrah is right on the eastern coast there of the Dead Sea. So it gives you a perspective where some of these, more famous stories can be found. And then you go up to Ammon, and that was part of this territory that you find the Israelites take over. So they are on the east side of the Jordan River, and now they are on the west side as well. Aram is all the way up north and to the right, and beyond, further north, is where you find Assyria. So you see, this now is a divided kingdom. We've been looking at it, right? All the kings, all of the kings from the Northern Empire, they have always been evil. There's not one good, and eventually they're going to come to an end. And so is the Southern Kingdom. Southern Kingdom is going to be comprised now of the descendants of Judah. That's where the promise comes from, all the way back. Remember, to when one of the sons of Jacob, his son named Judah, back in Genesis chapter 49, was given a promise. And that promise was that out of him would come a ruler who will rule over God's people. And so we're looking for this, this servant of the Lord that is going to fulfill all of these promises. And it's hit and miss here in the kingdom of Judah. It doesn't work out exactly the way in which the people had anticipated. And so one of the things that I'd like you to bear in mind with me is there is a timeline now for both of these kingdoms. They are going to come to an end. This whole period of Judges is going to result in the people of God being exiled from their land. And I want to spend some time this week just talking a little bit more about this, because the exile is going to be our next major topic of study. And to fully understand that, we just need to make sure that we have some of these facts down about what took place here in this divided kingdom. So what I'd like to do is, now that you have in your head this formation of these two kingdoms, I want you to see what's going to happen up to the northern kingdom, known as Israel, and the southern kingdom, known as Judah. And so here, I put together this little map. The Assyrians that are further north on our map, the Assyrians are going to come down on 722 BC, and they're going to conquer this northern kingdom of Israel. They're going to destroy all that has taken place in this, has been established in this northern kingdom. The kings, they're going to do it at multiple times. They will come, but what we find here is eventually they conquer the entire northern kingdom of Israel, and it is no longer heard of. That kingdom is never going to be reformulated. And we'll see that this whole united land is going to be occupied by many other nations. And so this promised land that God gave them is taken away. And so what's going to happen to the people of Israel? What's going to happen now that they have lost their land? They have lost the temple. The temple is going to be destroyed. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So let me just put together a little timeline here for you. See, in 612 BC, what you find here is that Babylon is going to conquer Syria. And the result of this is that it's around 612. The Assyrians, they begin to leak down into that southern kingdom, but they don't really conquer it. Babylon comes and they conquer Assyria. So as big a deal as Assyria was, destroying, and gathering up territory all around them, yeah, they were nothing compared to what you would find with the Babylonians. And the Babylonians then would not only, stop at conquering Assyria, but because Syria had taken over the northern kingdom, guess what? They also are going to come down, and they're going to threaten the southern kingdom as well. But before they do, there was an alliance that was made with Assyria in Egypt. So you had the Assyrians all the way up north, and then you had, so the Assyrians were up north, and then on the lower part was Egypt. And so they thought that if they had this alliance, they would just squeeze whoever was in the middle. And so it worked for a period, but then Babylon comes and it captured both Assyria and captured, Egypt, so that Egypt withdrew, and that was in 605. So you see, there's a lot of saber rattling during this period of time. 722, the northern kingdom ceases to exist. Just a short time later, right, in 612, Babylon defeats Assyria. 605, they defeat Egypt, and all the while they are beginning to conquer territory also in the southern kingdom. But it's not until 600. It's not until 586 BC that we see that they destroy the southern kingdom of Judah. And so this is where we're headed. What we're headed to is this complete removal of Israel from the land. So both the northern kingdoms and the southern kingdoms are going to be absolutely destroyed. The southern kingdom, known as Judah, right? They will be destroyed. The city of Jerusalem will be overrun. The gates around Jerusalem will be burned. The temple will be destroyed. The people the inhabitants of that land, if they aren't, if they don't fall to the sword of Babylon, they are taken off as exiles. So here's a little, further, a little bit of a timeline for you. When you look at this map, it's around 605 BC that they conquer Egypt, but they also come and they begin to occupy some of the land in Judah. And it's during that period of time that Daniel is taken away. Remember the story in your Bible about Daniel? Daniel, who fights is thrown into a fiery pit, or Daniel, who's thrown into a lion's den. Yeah, see, this is the Daniel that was taken out in 605 BC. And so Daniel is brought into the court of the king of Babylon, who's known as Nebuchadnezzar. So King Nebuchadnezzar is now the king of Babylon, under which the likes of Ezekiel are brought, Daniel are brought. And if you think of Ezekiel and Daniel as these books in your Bible, they're also written at a period of time when the exile is beginning to take place. And so much of those books then become a look into the future, what God is promising. And think about it, when you're away from your homeland, what do you really have, to depend on but these promises from God? And that's why Daniel, Ezekiel, they follow this apocalyptic literature, like the book of Revelation, right? That speaks about things that are yet to be, and that's exactly what we read about in the books like Ezekiel and Daniel, who are taken out between the 612 and 605. But then God raises up other prophets too. The other prophets that we see, because like if like in this land, just to give you again another picture, when you see the yellow lines, that's the line of of the uh, of the Assyrians. So you see Assyria up there towards the upper middle of your map now, and you see Nineveh above. That was the capital city, right, of Assyria. And so they took over all of this land. You see how it goes all the way down into parts of Egypt. That was big territory for the Assyrians. But look at the Babylonians. The Babylonians, they come and they're the orange circle. They go way down. They reconquer this land from Egypt, like I told you, right around 605, and around 612, they wind up encroaching on all of this territory and expanding it all the way down, as you could see, well into the Persian Gulf and into this Arabian desert. So this whole section of land now has been conquered by the Babylonians. So you could see how far-reaching, this whole conquering territory, really encompasses. So Babylon was no joke. They come in and and if you just look alongside the Mediterranean Sea there, that little sliver of land, that was where Israel stood, and you could see how they just completely, overran all of this territory. So having said that, you see now that this is a force that they are going to have to contend with, and so that's why one of the things that I want you to see in this map as well is the fact that between, after the conquering of Syria and before the conquering of Babylon, God raises up another prophet. And this prophet's name this prophet's name is Habakkuk. Habakkuk is going to now be the one who will speak to the nation before the southern kingdom is destroyed, right? And while some of these, alliances are like for instance with Egypt are being overrun. So this is why when we come to this place, we learn a little bit more about this prophet named Isaiah. And here's a text that I want you to read with me from Jeremiah chapter 22. It says, "People from many nations will pass by this city and will ask one another, 'Why has the Lord done such a thing to this great city?' And the answer will be, 'Because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God and have worshiped and served other gods.'" If you're ever wondering sometimes why God is allowing this to take place, then you can see it's because they have forsaken the covenant that God made with them. See, all of this destruction, all of this carnage is because people have shown themselves to be unfaithful. And in their unfaithfulness to God, it has manifested in an unfaithfulness to the very people themselves. So it's not like God is looking arbitrarily and saying, these are really basically a nice people, but they fell in love with someone else, so I'm going to destroy them. Now that's not how the Bible works. You see, it's not so much that they followed another God, but in following that other God, what did it do to the people themselves? How did they treat one another? How did they go about their living? They became like the pagan nations around them. So there was all this injustice, this wickedness that took place. I mean, there were abominations that were made. And so you also then begin to read in your Bible how God is beginning to raise up prophets to speak into this period of time. Jeremiah was one of those prophets, right? Speaking to this southern kingdom. Isaiah was also given prophecy to the northern and to the southern kingdoms. You find that God raises up Micah, another one, Amos, Jonah, all speaking to this northern kingdom, of Israel, before they're going to be overrun, giving them opportunities, speaking about the injustices that they brought to each other, not only their infidelity to God, but also to one another. They broke every one of these commandments that God gave. And if you remember those commandments, they had everything to do with the way in which I related to God and how I relate to my neighbor. Right? So to God, you shall have no other gods before me, no idols. Don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy, because that the recognition of the Sabbath day was a way for all of us to realign ourselves with God's will and his purposes. It was a time in the rhythm of one's week where all of a sudden we're hearing again from this word. We are gathering together for worship. We are reminded of all that God has done for us. And so consequently, you stop going, you stop being reminded, you stop reading, and next thing you know, you become more and more like the people around you. And that's exactly what was happening to the nation of Israel as a whole, and in particular in the northern and southern kingdoms. And then what about all of those commandments that God had for you and me to walk and treat with one another? See, the first part of the 10 commandments had to do with my relationship with God. Second part of that had to do with honoring your father and mother. Do not commit murder, right? Do not steal. Do not commit adultery. Do not, bear false witness against your neighbor. Don't covet your neighbor's stuff. See, this is the way in which a community was to remain healthy and secure, looking out for one another, caring for one another. And instead, they're ripping one another off. They have become as immoral as the nations around them. And so the quality of life for the people living in those kingdoms was denigrated. Who wants to live in that kind of environment? You see that taking place in the world around us, where those kinds of, these codes of just common decency, when they're eroded, it makes it so difficult for the people, for the inhabitants of that community. So Jeremiah 22, 8 and 9 underscores why this is happening. All of this is happening, and it's going to happen to Jerusalem in the southern kingdom, because they have forsaken the covenant of the Lord their God, and they have worshiped and served other gods. And so what does God do? God raises up a prophet by the name of Habakkuk. And Habakkuk is now going to preach to these people, because he's already seen what has happened to the north. And the saber rattling of the Babylonians is beginning to affect the southern kingdom. And so I'd like to use Habakkuk as this example, because Habakkuk now is this prophet who is living during this time of so much social unrest. He's also a prophet that is seeing the deterioration of this covenant promise that God made with his people. And he is absolutely taken back. He can't fathom how all of this has been falling apart now. And so at one point, Habakkuk is going to raise his voice, and he's going to offer his protest. So why don't we end this morning by now recognizing how it is that Habakkuk got into this space, and really the lament of his heart. And then we'll pick up some other themes as we continue this week, looking at Judah's unrepentance as it's leading to the destruction of this southern kingdom. Habakkuk starts off his prophecy by saying, listen, how long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you don't listen? Or cry out to you violence, but you do not save? See, now when you read that, you understand what he's talking about. He's talking about not just the the violence that is being, played out between Assyria and Babylon, but how now it's encroaching on the southern kingdom, how they already had removed the northern kingdom. But he's also looking at other things here. So for instance, look, he goes on, he says, why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There's strife and conflict abounds. See what I mean about how living in this period of time, it just seeps down and affects everyone. Even when you're trying to do the right thing, it's so difficult to live in a time when the people themselves are given to such a rebellious spirit. It makes it hard for everyone. And Habakkuk, this prophet, a man who loves God, who wants to see God's will and his ways prospering in the land, for the life of him, he just can't figure it out. Why is this happening? And then he ends here. He says, therefore, the law, right? These commandments, this covenant that God made with us, it's paralyzed. And the result of the law being paralyzed, not being followed through, is that justice never prevails. And the result, the wicked hem in the righteous so that justice is perverted. You catch that? And so here they find themselves now in a position where everything is just about lost, and Habakkuk is left without words. He's just crying out to God to come and help. My friends, can't you begin to see the parallels that we have in the day in which we're living, or perhaps experiences that you go through, where you wonder, where is God in the midst of this trial? These lessons that we're going to learn today from Habakkuk are lessons that are going to stick with us for the rest of our life if we allow them. They give us an insight into God's will and his purposes so that we don't lose hope, that we fix our eyes on this prize, and we never doubt that God is for me and not against me. So, my friends, this is part of the world in which we're living, and God is giving us a glimpse into a period of time when his will and his ways were being absolutely neglected. And the result of that brought so much turmoil on the lives of even the people of God. Well, we'll continue this study because it does get better, but it's also a very sober word, a word that demonstrates to us that the heart of man doesn't change. I mentioned on Sunday that people change, the names of nations change, the dates change, but the heart of man remains the same. There are lessons to be gleaned so that we can live this life with greater confidence. My friends, thank you so much for being a part of our Seize the Day today. And Lord willing, we'll spend more time again this week. You go out, seize the day, never forgetting that God is good all the time. God bless you, my friends.